There is a difference between a man who questions your intelligence and a man who is using your intelligence to measure his own worth. The first kind is curious. The second kind is afraid. And the dangerous thing, the thing that took me a long time to understand, is that the second kind never announces himself. He walks in with credentials. He walks in with titles. He walks in with 40 years of being told by institutions that he is the authority in the room. The authority. Always. In every room. Even rooms he has never been in before. Even rooms that were built by somebody else. The man who came onto my stage that afternoon carried his credentials the way some men carry weapons. Not to build something, not to teach, to establish, before a single word of conversation had passed between us, that the conversation had already been decided. That he already knew how it was going to go. That he was the kind of man who grades people before they open their mouths. He graded me before I opened my mouth. I have been a black man in America for 67 years. I grew up in Glenville, Ohio, in a house where education was not something you put in a frame on the wall, it was something you carried inside you, something you earned with your hands and your hours and your failures and your getting back up. My father did not have a degree. My father had something better than a degree. My father had the kind of wisdom that does not come from a textbook, the kind that comes from paying attention to the world as it actually is, not as you were taught to believe it should be. I have been called many things in 67 years. But this one was different. Not because it hurt more, I have heard worse. I have stood in rooms where the words aimed at me were far sharper. It was different because of what he thought he was doing. He thought he was stating a fact. He thought he was making an observation so obviously true that nobody in the room would feel the need to push back. He was wrong about the room. And I had 9 words to tell him exactly how wrong. Today I want to tell you 3 things. What he said. What it cost the woman sitting in that audience who deserved to be protected, and the 9 words, just 9, that made him stand up and walk out of my studio in front of 200 people and a live television crew. Before I tell you any of that, if you have ever been told that you are not smart enough, not credentialed enough, not the right kind of educated for the room you are standing in, hit subscribe. Not for me. For every person who was ever made to feel small by someone who confused a diploma with decency. My stage manager's name is Marcus. He has been with Family Feud since the 3rd season. He is a quiet man. Precise. The kind of man who gives you information the way a surgeon hands off an instrument, clean, exact, no wasted motion. Marcus does not come to me before tapings with warnings. In 11 years, he has come to me with a warning exactly 4 times. This was the 4th. He found me in the green room 45 minutes before we went to air. He told me there was a guest in the audience. A professor. 63 years old. Philosophy and ethics, 31 years at a university in New England. His name was Dr. Elliot Harcourt. He had arrived 90 minutes early. Marcus noted this because early arrivals are almost always the ones who need the room to belong to them before everyone else gets there. In those 90 minutes, Dr. Harcourt had done 3 things. He had corrected a production assistant on the phonetic pronunciation of a French loanword she used in casual conversation. Unprompted. Publicly, in front of 4 colleagues. He had told one of our contestant coordinators that Family Feud was a useful cultural artifact, if not exactly an intellectual exercise. And he had asked Marcus, directly, with the tone of a man filing a report, whether the host had any formal academic background or was he simply, naturally entertaining. Marcus told him I had attended Kent State University. Doctor, Harcourt nodded slowly. The kind of nod that is not agreement. The kind that files information under a category it had already created. Marcus said, "I just want you to know who's in the room today." I thanked him. I told him I had it. Lord, forgive me. I let it go. Her name was Claudette, 51 years old. Home health aide. Birmingham, Alabama. 19 years on the job. 19 years of early mornings and late nights and other people's hard days becoming her hard days. Because that was the work, and she had chosen the work, and she did not complain about the work. She came with her sister, her daughter, her son-in-law, and her 11-year-old granddaughter, who wore her church braids and a dress the color of a Georgia peach, and who held her grandmother's hand from the moment they walked into the studio until the moment they were called to the stage. I noticed the granddaughter first. She looked at everything. The cameras, the set, the lights, the way a child looks at something they have only ever seen on a screen when they discover for the first time that it is a real physical place with real physical weight. Her eyes were wide and completely unguarded in the way that only children's eyes are before the world teaches you to narrow them. I watched her squeeze her grandmother's hand. I watched Claudette squeeze back without looking down. The squeeze of a woman who has been a safe place for a very long time and does it now without thinking, the way breathing is done without thinking. Dr. Elliot Harcourt was seated 6 rows behind them. A leather portfolio on his lap. A jacket with elbow patches and wire-rimmed glasses. He was surveying the studio the way a man surveys a place he has decided is beneath him, but has graciously agreed to visit anyway. He looked at Claudette's family. Then, he looked away. The kind of look you give to something you have already decided requires no further examination. Claudette was alive up there. That is the only word for it. Alive, she played the game the way she must have lived her whole life, with her whole body, her whole heart, all of it fully present and fully committed. When she got an answer right, she threw her head back and laughed from somewhere deep, the kind of laugh that does not care what it looks like. When she got an answer wrong, she grabbed her sister's arm and said, "Girl, I knew that wasn't right," and laughed again, the same laugh, just as deep. Her granddaughter in the front rows was bouncing. Not performing bouncing, real bouncing. The kind a child does when they cannot contain joy inside a body that was not built to contain it. Claudette stepped up to the Fast Money podium alone. Her granddaughter put both hands over her mouth. I said, "You ready?" She said, "Honey, I was born ready." The audience laughed. I laughed. It was the kind of answer that makes a room feel like a room instead of a television set. She played a clean round. Not perfect. Her third answer missed. But her first, second, fourth, and fifth were solid, the kind of solid that comes from a person who has paid attention her whole life to the way regular people think and talk and answer questions nobody warned them were coming. When the score came up, 187, the studio erupted. Her daughter burst into tears before the number finished appearing. Her sister grabbed both of her own cheeks with both hands. Her son-in-law picked up the granddaughter and spun her once, and she screamed with her whole 11-year-old heart. Claudette stood at the podium with her hand pressed flat over her chest. She was not crying. She was receiving it. The way you receive something you have been waiting for so long that when it finally arrives you are not sure at first that it is real. I started toward her. That is when I heard it. Not loud. Men like Dr. Elliot Harcourt do not shout. Shouting is what people do when they do not trust the authority of their own voice. Dr. Harcourt trusted the authority of his voice completely. He had trusted it for 31 years in lecture halls and faculty meetings, His voice had never needed to raise itself because the institutions around it had always already agreed. He said it at conversation volume, to the man seated next to him, no more than 12 feet from where I was standing. He said, "Remarkable, isn't it? An uneducated man hosting an uneducated show, and yet here we all are, pretending it constitutes entertainment." He said uneducated twice, once for me, once for the show. He wrapped them both in the same sentence so that the insult had a shape, a thesis even, the kind of thesis a man writes when he has already graded the paper and is now simply providing the justification. Dead silence. Not from the whole room. Claudette's family was still holding each other, the audience was still applauding. But in the 6-seat radius around Dr. Harcourt, there was silence. The kind that falls when people hear something they recognize immediately as wrong and do not know yet what to do with that recognition. 3 people looked at each other, and then quickly looked away. And then the silence that settled into me was not shock, not even anger. It was something older and colder and more patient than anger. It was the silence of a man who has heard this particular sentence his whole life, in 100 different forms from 100 different mouths, and who has always let it pass. Who has always told himself the room is not the place, the moment is not the moment. That silence was the most dangerous one. Because I recognized it. And this time, I did not want to live inside it. I looked at Claudette's granddaughter. She was still being held by her father. Still smiling. She had not heard what Dr. Harcourt said. She was 11 years old, and she was in the room where her grandmother had just won, and that was everything, and that was all. I thought about the day when she would no longer be protected by not hearing things. I thought about the day those words would find her. In a classroom, in a hallway, in a job interview, in a faculty meeting of her own, 30 years from now, when some man with a leather portfolio would look at her and decide, before she opened her mouth, what category she belonged in. I thought about whether the person in the room that day, the person who was standing close enough to say something, would say something. Or, keep walking. If you have ever been in that room, if you have ever been the person standing close enough, share this with someone before you keep watching. Not for me. For every 11-year-old girl who deserves a room where someone says something. I stopped walking toward Claudette. I turned around. I want you to understand what I felt in the 10 steps between where I was standing and where Dr. Harcourt was seated. Because people get this part wrong. They make the hero certain. They make the decision instant and obvious and free of cost. It was none of those things. The first thing I felt was the instinct. The version of Steve Harvey who grew up poor in Glenville, Ohio, who hustled and stumbled and failed and stood back up and hustled again, that version of me wanted to reach all the way back to every room where someone had looked at me the way Dr. Tom Harcourt looked at me and settle all of it at once. Wanted to list every stage, every stadium, every network, every zero on every contract. Wanted to be loud about it. Wanted him to understand the precise size of the thing he had just called uneducated. I did not do that. I did not raise my voice. I did not begin the list. The second thing I felt was my mother. Eloise Harvey. She passed in 2000, and I still hear her the way I heard her when she was alive, not as a memory, but as a presence. My mother had a 3rd-grade education, and she was the wisest person I have ever known. She used to say, "Steve, don't you ever let someone else's small box be the room you live in. You hear me? Their box is their problem. You walk right past it." I heard her. Right there, 10 steps from Dr. Elliot Harcourt and his leather portfolio and his 31 years. The third thing I felt was Claudette's granddaughter. Still smiling, still being held, still 11. Still unaware that a man 6 rows behind her had just decided, in one sentence, that her grandmother's joy was a cultural artifact and not an intellectual exercise. I made a decision. I walked to Dr. Harcourt's row. Slowly, without urgency. The kind of slow that tells a room something is happening without requiring the room to prepare for it. I stood at the end of the row. He looked up from his portfolio. He was not afraid. Men who have spent 31 years being the authority in every room are not afraid when another authority approaches. He looked up with the expression of a man prepared to be proven right about whatever he had already decided. I let him look. 8 seconds. I have watched the tape. Then, I said, my mother never finished school. Taught me everything. 9 words. Not loud. Not performed. The kind of sentence you say to someone when you want them to understand that you are not angry, you are free. That the thing they threw at you has nowhere to land because you built your foundation somewhere they cannot reach. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I held the eye contact for 3 more seconds. Then I nodded once, the kind of nod that closes a conversation, not continues one, and I turned my back on him. Not dramatically, not for the room. I simply turned, because the conversation was finished, and I had somewhere better to be. I walked to Claudette. I took both her hands. I got low, one knee on the studio floor, so I was looking up at her slightly, so she was the one standing tall. And I said, 19 years taking care of people. You deserve this more than you know. She looked down at me. Her eyes went wet. She said, how'd you know about 19 years? I said, I do my homework. The room laughed. She laughed. Even through the wet eyes, she laughed. The same deep laugh, from the same deep place. The kind that does not care what it looks like. Behind me, I heard the sound of a seat folding up. Then footsteps. Dr. Elliot Harcourt walked out of Studio 6 in front of 200 people, a live crew, and 2 cameras that were not pointed at him, but caught him anyway. He held his leather portfolio against his chest with both arms, the kind of hold that is not carrying, it is protecting, and he walked through the side door and it closed behind him. The room watched him go. Then the room turned back to Claudette. And the room cheered. If you are still here with me, share this video with one person who was told at some point in their life that their kind of smart didn't count. Their kind of wisdom didn't qualify. Their kind of education, the kind you get from living and working and paying attention, didn't belong in the room. Share it with that person. Then, keep watching. What happened after, the part the cameras did not get, happened in the parking structure. Marcus found me after the taping wrapped. He told me that Dr. Harcourt had been brought to the taping as a guest of his nephew, one of our crew members, a 26-year-old lighting technician named Devon, who had been with us 2 seasons. Devon had spent 3 weeks trying to get his uncle a seat in the audience. He was proud of his uncle, the professor. He had been looking forward to this for a month. Devon found his uncle in the parking structure. Marcus did not hear the conversation. He saw it through the glass of the structure entrance. He told me it lasted approximately 4 minutes. At the end of it, Devon stood with his hands in his pockets looking at the concrete floor, and Dr. Harcourt walked to his rental car and drove away. Devon came back inside and finished the strike without a word. I found him afterward. I did not mention the uncle. I told him he had done good work today. I told him I noticed. He nodded without looking up, and I let him have that. As for Dr. Parcourt, within 2 weeks, the clip from our studio cameras had been shared by 3 separate crew members on their personal accounts. I did not ask them to. The clip did not have audio. It did not need audio. A man in elbow patches walking out of a game show studio alone while 200 people cheered behind him tells its own story. The university where he taught issued a brief statement 3 weeks later about an ongoing review of faculty conduct standards. I do not know what came of the review. I know he has not been back to my studio. Claudette called my production office the week after the episode aired. She had gone home to Birmingham with a check for $22,647, the full prize plus travel stipend. She had taken her granddaughter to get ice cream the night they landed. Not as a celebration, she said, just because the girl had asked 3 times, and the answer had always been not right now, and that night the answer was yes. 2 scoops, strawberry and cookies and cream. She told me the thing I want to share with you. She said, "Mr. Harvey, I didn't hear what that man said. My daughter told me afterward. And I want you to know, I'm glad I didn't hear it when it happened. Because I would have carried it home. And I don't want to carry it anymore." I said, "You don't have to." She said, "I know." That's what I'm telling you. I know. Her name was Claudette, 51 years old, home health aide, 19 years of taking care of people. She went home with a check and a granddaughter with strawberry ice cream on her chin and the particular lightness of a woman who has decided finally to put down something heavy she has been carrying for a long time. She earned every bit of it. Let me close with this. Intelligence is not a building. You do not get to declare who is inside it and who is not. You do not get to stand at the door with your 31 years and your leather portfolio and decide before a single word has been exchanged that the person in front of you has not earned the right to the room. My mother never finished school. She taught me everything I needed. Claudette never sat in a lecture hall. She spent 19 years learning what the textbooks cannot teach, how to be present with a person in the worst moments of their life and make them feel like they are not alone in it. That is an education. That is a credential. That is the kind of wisdom that outlasts anything you can put in a frame. There are people in your life right now who have been told their kind of smart does not count, their kind of knowledge does not qualify, their kind of wisdom is not the right kind for the rooms they are trying to enter. Be the person who disagrees. Out loud. In the moment. Not in the car on the way home. Not in your head at 2 a.m. In the room. When it is still happening. When there is still something that can be done. Do not be the person who almost said something. Do not let Claudette's granddaughter grow up in a world where the people who were standing close enough stayed quiet. Say the thing, even if it is only 9 words. Even if your voice is small. Even if you are not sure it will matter. It will matter. It always matters. If this story stayed with you, hit subscribe. Every week we bring you a story about dignity, about people who chose to say the thing, do the thing, be the thing, when it would have been so much easier not to. Take this video and share it with one person in your life who has been told their kind of educated is not the right kind. One person who has been graded before they opened their mouth. I want them to see this. I want them to know that 9 words at the right moment can change a room. And drop something in the comments. A word. A heart. A memory of a time when someone said the thing that needed to be said, and it changed something for you. God bless Claudette. God bless her granddaughter. And God bless every person watching this right now who has been carrying someone else's small box and is ready to put it down. You are educated. You have always been educated. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I'll see you in the next one.